My name is Jennifer Lee Anderson, and I'm here to tell my I Remember story. When I was growing up in London, I had just finished primary school. I was super excited to start secondary school. I had to have been about maybe 11 or 12. Going to secondary school meant that I was getting ready to learn about a history, my history, at least what I thought was my history. I learned about Guy Fawkes Night, the Bloody Tower, and the King and Queen of England. It wasn't until I came to America that I realized it was not my history. I remember applying for a job and looking at the application form and wondering why it didn't have Black. It had African American, Hispanic, white, and other. I remember checking the box on other and writing Black because I was a Black British woman. It wasn't until I came to St. Paul's that I realized I was an African American woman. I was embarrassed, disgusted, and ashamed to learn that there were slaves in London. It left me ashamed to speak. I didn't want anyone to know that I was British and that I didn't know about my history. It took me a long time to overcome that. It took me a long time to find my voice. It took me a long time to be proud of who I am.
We cannot claim naivete. We cannot say we were people undeveloped. We cannot say there were no signs. We can only say that we did not heed them. Sound wisdom was as common to us as the evening breeze. We scoffed and shrugged at elders' forewarning of a time of great tragedy and chaos. We did not believe them. We had learned to ignore our own gods, to take their goodness for granted, to believe that because of them, we were immune to external attack. So we did not hear them. We heard only what we sought to hear. Now we hear it all echoing in our regretful memories.
As the ship sailed on, we made music once again with the means of our bondage. Our bodies swayed with the violent seas. Chains and irons began to sing. The melody had been imperceptible at first. But then, as more of us died, empty chains rattled louder, accompanied by our mournful cry.
The next morning, we dragged through the mud to the auction block. We knew the routine, where to stand, not to speak, not to look pale people in the eye, but frankly, they were not our concern. Our concern was who'd be next and who'd be last.
Our humming began Our humming began at a cool, even pace. When beats were slow and lulling, one by one, we joined in having found a language that needed no words. We hummed. We hummed until we knew we would survive. We hummed until we released mothers and fathers whom we would never see again. We hummed until our love for and gratitude to each other was clear. We hummed a celebration for living, for fighting, for refusing to die. For when enduring, when giving up would have been easier. For still believing, against all odds, that we'd get home someday.
And after dancing, we sat at the feet of our elders and absorbed wisdom like tilled earth absorbs rain. We were taught the values of honesty and integrity, hard work and discipline. We heard stories of ants that in their diligence never let others deflect them from their mission. We were told never, ever to eat without first giving thanks. We were told to respect life and all life forms. Every child heard it. We had no choice. In this way, they gave us the tools of wisdom.
Hear our earnest prayer, O Lord. Hear our humble cry. Precious, loving, caring Lord, on whom we rely. Ever loving, ever living God, of whom no one can compare. All we ask is that you hear our prayer. Give us strength, most holy Lord, strength to meet this day. Lead us by your holy word, guide us in your way. For life is filled with winding turns. We have often lost our way. All we ask is that you lead today. Give us love that's true, oh Lord, trusting as a child. Love for all we see, oh Lord, pure and undefiled. But to heal the heart and not turn away anyone who is in need. All we ask is teach us love indeed. Take me home with peace, my Lord. Let me rest with you. When I fought the fight and I kept the faith, and my race on earth is won. All I ask is that you say, well done. Lord, please let me hear you say, well done.
We were warriors and hunters, poets and jolly, farmers and soothsayers. We were magicians and healers, artisans and thinkers, writers and dancers. We were fathers
and mothers, sisters
and brothers,
cousins and kinsmen.
kinsmen.
We were lovers and we were home.
We loved the land, and it loved us.
We were black like the land and kissed by the sun.
We knew our strengths
and our frailties, and we knew much needed improvement.
Our love for each other sustained us.
We felt it.
Invisible, yet tangible.
Wounded, but living.
Hurt, but not despairing.
We stared it into
each other's eyes as a tribute to the battered, yet steadfast survivors who would one day heal the nations.
That was our new mission. That was why we've been scattered to every corner of this earth.
And of course, the healer must be wounded to know the depth of pain.
For out of pain comes restoration. We didn't know that then. Most of us don't even know it now. But the trees will say it. These are they.
These are they. Until the dark, beautiful souls of Africa rise and say yes.
We are they.
We are here. This was not the end. There would be another day. This
was
the
the
coming.
coming.
Let's thank God tonight for our cast. Tonight's script comes directly out of the book, The Coming. Beloved, the author of The Coming is here. Dr. Daniel Black, author, professor, consultant, mentor. Dr. Daniel Black is an award-winning novelist, professor, and activist. His published works include They Tell Me of Home, The Sacred Place, Perfect Peace, 12 Gates to the City, The Coming, and Listen to the Lambs. In 2014, he won the Distinguished Writers Award from the Mid-Atlantic Writers Association. The Go On Girl National Book Club named him Author of the Year in 2011 for his novel, Perfect Peace. Perfect Peace was also chosen as the 2014 selection for If All Arkansas Read the Same Book by the Arkansas Center for the Book at the Arkansas State Library. The novel has been reprinted more than 10 times and is being heralded as an American literary classic. Dr. Black has also been twice nominated for the Townsend Literary Prize, the Ernest J. Gaines Award, the Frero Grumbly Literary Prize, and the Lambda Literary Award, and the Georgia Author of the Year Prize. In 2015, Dr. Black's The Coming was published to broad critical acclaim. The novel is a first-hand account of the trauma and triumph of Africans aboard a slave ship in the 16th century. Reviewers call this work brilliant, poetic, and a literary homage to the lives of those Africans tossed into the sea. In 2016, Dr. Black's long-awaited novel, Listen to the Lambs, was published. This novel explores the lives and agency of homeless people who find each other on the street and create lives of meaning without material substance. Dr. Black's work has been justly celebrated. National Book Award-winning author Charles Johnson says, "The Coming is powerful and brilliant." He goes on to state, "This is a work to be proud of." Pulitzer Prize-winning author Alice Walker says, "Perfect Peace is a spellbinding novel that kept me reading late into several nights." A native of Kansas City, Kansas, Dr. Black spent his formative years in rural Blackwell, Arkansas. Dr. Black graduated from Clark College, now Clark Atlanta University, where he earned the prestigious Oxford Modern British Studies Fellowship and studied at Oxford University. He was awarded a full fellowship to Temple University, where he studied with Poet Laureate of the Black Arts Movement, Sonia Sanchez, and earned his PhD in African American Studies. Dr. Black is now professor of African American Studies at his alma mater, Clark Atlanta University. Dr. Black lives in Atlanta and is the founder of the Nduga Nzinga Rites of Passage Nation, a mentoring society for African American youth. St. Paul Nation, brothers and sisters watching all around the world, it is my pleasure tonight to present author of The Coming, Daniel Black.
Good evening, St. Paul. I will say only this, and then I'll get into the reading. The ancestors live here. They dwell in this place. I don't think there is a place, an institution on this side of the Atlantic that does this work other than this place. And then came the disaster. With open arms, we embraced those who looked nothing like us, assuming all life honors life. But we were wrong. If only we could have seen into the future, we might have avoided the enslavement. Most of us had no such powers. The few who did, the seers and sages, we had dismissed. They were always speaking of things to come, warning of impending disasters that rarely came to pass, at least in our lifetime. Now we know that prophecies come to one generation, but materialize in the next. If only we had listened. If only we had had more disciplined ears. But we did not. And so we blamed ourselves. We blamed our gods. We blamed each other. But really there was no one to blame, only shame to bear. And pity, great pity, that a people so strong missed so many clues. The forest whispered it, the birds chirped it, the trees waved it, the antelope danced it, the tall grass swayed it, the lions roared it, the elders said it over and over. Beware, seek not the thing you do not need. Greed destroys wisdom. Let just enough be enough. But we were too blessed. Our abundance suggested immortality, so we stopped searching for invisible things. Our mothers had worked so hard that we didn't have to. Our fathers had killed enough game that their sons hardly even knew the hunt. We didn't know then what we know now. A life of leisure destroys a child. When there's nothing to work for, there's nothing to gain, nothing to die for. So we Africans had to die that we might live again. And that's what we did. We died. By the thousands and hundreds of thousands, we died. We'd never seen such unjustifiable violence, bloody bodies laying prostrate across the earth as if pleading for forgiveness. Those who survived did not mourn. There was no time. The loss was too great. We still have not mourned. We still have no time. We remember, yes, but we have not mourned. And so death came quickly. It came unannounced. It came cloaked in our own garb. It came white as clouds, smiling as if it loved us. Death came in the darkness of night while we were laughing and talking with ancestors. It came in legions with guns and ammunition too powerful to battle. Death came like the monsoon winds. It came like a flood. Death came with earth-shaking force we could not control. It came under the authority of nations we did not know. It came with men whose absent wives benefited from their husbands' despicable behavior. Death came with men whose children would one day inherit their father's legacy of violence and wealth ill-gained. Death came to strip the land of its glory. It came to thousands and hundreds of thousands without sympathy for our loss. Death came with impaled brutality. It came to scatter children's blood-soaked bodies about the earth, thus fertilizing dry, yearning soil. But in the end, death came simply to teach us that we were brothers. And now we know. But this was the coming. On day 8th at ship, our humming began at a cool, even pace. When beats were slow and lulling, a man purred a dark melody. And then we repeated it. It wasn't a groan from pain and desolation, but deliberate lines of constructed meter and time that jarred our spirits and invited our participation. One by one, we joined in, some in upper registers, some in the depths of the voice, having found a language that needed no words. We hummed our commitment to raise our children wherever we went. In the blackness of that ship, we hummed. We hummed that our women slightly above us might know we had not forgotten them. We hummed for the dead lying next to us. We hummed for children not yet born. We hummed for children born but left behind. We hummed for kinsmen, yesterday's enemies who were now precious, coveted friends. And sometimes we hummed to mute the screeching and pleading of our young girls. They were girls, some of them barely 13 reigns, screaming from their very souls. The echo never settled. It rang throughout the hull, disrupting our sleep. Our only defense was to hum, and so we hummed. We hummed that they might be reminded that captors could mar their bodies, but they could not touch their spirits. That they might know his forced entry did not disturb their beauty. That they might know the day would come when we'd loose our chains and stand guard over their virtue. But until then, we believed that as long as we hummed, the timbre of our voice would cover them. And occasionally, young men were violated this way too. They fought like cornered lions. It always took 3 or 4 white crewmen to subdue one of our boys. Then, with his strength exhausted and pride wounded, he was dragged up the wooden stairs to the place of defilement. We heard him screaming each step of the way. It was a hollow kind of roar, housed in a deep, innocent place. And so we hummed. We saw in our minds his mouth stretched wide and eyes bulging. When he returned, his face was a blank stare. They threw him like a corpse into his holding place and once again bound him with chains. We begged him not to surrender, but our words were useless babbling, so we hummed some more until slowly, painfully, he cried and joined the chorus of protection for himself. We screamed and we rocked. One might think this episode ruined our resolve. It did not. It became fuel for our survival. We knew a day of reckoning would come. It was the promise of the universe. By day 64, so many of us had died. Diseases, melancholy, and big fish all took their portion. But more of us lived too. Each day, we began to speak our names aloud. It became a collective ritual, a daily roll call, an announcement of the yet living. Someone would beat his planks like a drum and say his own name 3 times. That was the sign. Then the rest of us would join in, beating our planks with our fists and screaming our names unto the heavens. Amadi! Kayode! Kwesi! Abubakar! Dumi! Atiba! Agbona! Bektimbe! Shamba! Azize! Chitope! Damani! Ato! Usman! Yoro! Chukwudi! Akintunde! Akinyele! Akinfola! Ajani! Wole! Osundwagwike! Alatanga! Tafataona! Tamba! Tafase! Mensa! Ansa! Olufime! Bataraishe! Muamoife! Ogunwale! And so many, many more. When there was silence, we knew a warrior had fallen. We didn't always remember his name, but we ceased drumming long enough to honor his memory. Then fists pounded again until every living soul made his living presence known. Our women were separated from us. They were above deck. But once we finished, they did the same. Chitalala! Ama! Tegbe! Naki! Pepikaye! Ifetayo! Chisanganda! Omalara! Akili! Kamara! Jaha! Kariamu! Zinzale! Oluyasa! Osizwe! Makata! Efuru! Binta! Nelaja! Titilayo! Inamwoye! Iyabode! Nakpangi! Ejioma! Nazapa! Monji! Lebna! Ngozi! Wade! We struck our planks once between each name. There were other names too. They had taken our drum, but not our rhythm. talking practically ceased. Shouts of anger and protest dwindled to mere whispers. We felt overwhelmed and belittled. A few grunted and beat planks, but for the most part, we closed our mouths and shivered with shame. We couldn't believe we'd let ourselves be captured by those with half our might. We were warriors. We were people of extraordinary achievements, men and women of triumphant courage. Now we realized that amidst those great accomplishments, we had missed something critical, something that would have saved us. A Wolof man told us what it was. Earlier in the journey, we had wasted considerable time arguing, whether from stepping on another's fingers on the way to dancing, or disagreeing about the course we should take to overthrow the ship, or fussing about whether it would be correct to spill one of our own people's blood who worked with them. Tempers flared and our character diminished. We knew better. We knew better. We'd been taught that character is never situational. So again, we failed our own teaching. We unleashed anger upon one another because there was no one else to bear it. And each time we fell below our standard, the Wolof man lifted his hands, spread his fingers apart, and shook his head sadly. He never said a word. Most didn't notice. Not until mid-journey, when after a fierce encounter between two men of once warring tribes, he screamed loudly. Still, he did not speak. He lifted his hands and spread his fingers. Angry, bulbous eyes forced us to look at him. Then slowly, he brought those fingers together until they melded into a tight fist. And finally, we understood. They had captured us because we had been divided. That was our lesson. That was the reason for our coming. Even in torture, though, our souls had not withered. They were buried somewhere deep within, in a place where no person could go. They were as timeless as the sun. Elders had taught us that a person's spirit permeates their flesh, interpreting the invisible and feeling the intangible. The soul never moves. It rests at the center of the self as the peace of God that dwells in every living thing. Throughout the journey, our souls fed hope to our consciousness when all hope was gone. It whispered into our weary ears, "There shall come a day when the last shall be first." And we believed. We believed because we needed to believe. We cursed our gods only because we believed in them. Even when they didn't come, we still believed. We welcomed death because we believed in life. We ate mush and endured the stench of human waste because we believed we could survive. And we did survive. And in surviving, we dreamed. We dreamed so many dreams. We dreamed so many years. We dreamed of our people coming together and building families filled with joy and overrunning with children. We dreamed of someone studying those ships and learning enough to take us home. We dreamed of continuing our initiations in this new land until we were sure we were men and women. We dreamed of healing rituals that would calm turbulent minds. We dreamed of the pale boy who had loved us from his heart, and we hoped for him a lifetime of blessings. And we dreamed that one day our children would know the cost of their being. We dreamed that they would know the price we had paid in this coming. And that would be enough. That would heal our souls. We had learned our lesson. And yet, even after dreaming, some days we wondered, would a day ever come when we told this story to our children's children's children, and they would wonder if it was real? We asked, would a day ever come when our own children's children would ask us simply, was that a myth, Granddaddy? Was that actually true, Grandma? We did not know. The only thing we knew for sure is that we would have to tell it. And in telling it, that would be enough that they could remember, if they ever chose to do so. And we prayed they would. For only in remembering would we reassume the throne. There would be another day. This was not the end. As long as there is one, we are still coming.
Brothers and sisters, Daniel Black. Dr. Black, first of all, thank you for consenting to come to us in person. You said to me, Pastor, if the congregation will read this book, I won't send you a video. I'm coming in person. And tonight, we are the better for your presence today.
Wow. I'm so honored.
And so, I'm going to do two things tonight. We're going to give an opportunity. Before I do this, let me just acknowledge the cast tonight.
Oh, absolutely.
That's done a phenomenal job.
Yes. Oh my God. Woo! Yes. Amazing.
Thank you, Lakai Worrell, for your direction.
Absolutely. Amen.
Gladys and James, thank you for your reading tonight.
Absolutely.
And to everyone that has put this production together in this presentation. But I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Yes, sir.
And then we're going to permit members of our audience tonight to also ask questions. And for those who are watching us virtually, if you put your questions in the comments section, we have folks who are monitoring that comment, that chat section, and they're going to get some questions to Dr. Black tonight. So please feel free to do that. Dr. Black,
Yes,
how did you come to this project? It is, we've been doing MAAFA for 27 years.
Yes, sir.
And for many of us, we have reported that we could not read the book all the way through.
Wow.
That we had to put it down. And I would say that after 27 years, we have grasped the story, we thought.
Yes, sir.
Until we started reading the book, and it shook many of us. How did you come to this project?
Well, truth of the matter is, I was writing another book at the time when I began to hear water in my head. Literally, I began to hear waves, and I really thought I was tripping. And so I called an elder of mine, and he said, "Well, put down what you're doing. Something else is coming to you." And for 3 days, I just kept hearing water. Louder and louder, more and more water. And I couldn't figure it out. And one day, I reclined on my sofa with my feet up, and I realized that I was in the position of the ancestors in the bottom of that ship. And while I was in that position, this began to pour straight from my head into, I screamed to get my son to hand me my laptop, and he handed it to me and I literally was rocking back and forth as the story came to me. And what I realized is people know about the facts of the Middle Passage, right? But people don't know the experience of the Middle Passage, right? And I decided that I wanted to give a gift to Black young people into this next millennium. And the gift I wanted to give to them was the explanation of how expensive their being is. Because I believe then and I believe now that if our young people knew how expensive they were, their behavior would shift. I believe that. Yeah. I believe that. I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that. Part of our issue is our young people think they're cheap. They think they're cheap. And so they behave cheaply sometimes and act cheaply sometimes. But if they really truly understood, hey, God, if they really truly understood what it took to keep Black life alive, right? I really believe then, and I believe now that they would really, really, truly behave differently. I teach this book at Clark Atlanta University. And there are many colleges now that have adopted it. Howard University has used the Coming, many others. And young people's response is something you've never, ever seen. It's something you've never, ever beheld. It has really, truly changed my whole world. Anytime I teach this book, children are lined up outside my office door, just weeping and wailing.
Yes.
Just literally. And I'm in the office and they're like, I'll wait. I've been in my office to 1 and 2 o'clock a.m. just trying to get kids emotionally back together again. You know, but the truth of the matter is this book is counter to American education.
Okay, talk about that.
Right? Because American education simply says we came on boats. First of all, we didn't come on boats. We didn't come on boats. We were dragged. We were dragged here literally against our spirits. But the other thing that I often teach students is, but our ancestors found creative ways to tell us this story. We just have not found the mediums to really understand that. For example, in the early African-American spirituals, I'm a musician. I'm the church musician. In the early African-American spiritual, they sing, "'Tis the old ship of Zion." But what people don't know is that ship is the slave ship. How do you know that? It has landed many a thousands. That's the ancestors trying to tell us how they arrived to this place. And they sing about these ships and they sing about these stormy seas. You know, there's so many African-American spirituals that talk about the rough seas, the rough oceans, right? Even James Cleveland's Peace Be Still.
Yeah.
Right. The reason that resonates with us, right, is because our spirits were in that troubled water. Right. And so what I'm really saying is that the ancestors hid the story, the narrative of the Middle Passage in the early African-American spiritual because the music was ours.
Okay.
Right. We owned the music. At the time, we didn't own the text yet. But we owned the rhythms. We owned the music. We owned those musical spaces. And I believe the ancestors knew that if they put the story in the music, it would never get lost. Right. But we have to learn how to listen and to hear it on several different levels. Right. And so the one other thing I'll say, too, about the conceiving of this book was I believe the ancestors chose me to write this book because I do have a PhD in African-American studies. I got a PhD at 25 and
Whoa. Excuse me?
I did. Yes, sir. And one of my areas of research was the Middle Passage. I was in that first cohort. I was in the first class of folks who got PhDs in African-American studies. Malefi Asante was my advisor. Sonia Sanchez was my dissertation advisor, et cetera. And I was tremendously I was tremendously interested in the Middle Passage because when I began to read about it, I began to wonder not only what happened to the people, but I began to wonder about the ways in which the Middle Passage distorted the ocean itself.
Talk about that.
How the water was violated, right? How Yemen Yah is raped. right?
Mm.
By,
Oh.
by bringing us to this place, by pouring blood of her own children back into her mouth,
Wow.
you know. But I also began to realize that there were things that happened on the Middle Passage that I think I had misunderstood, Pastor. Like, you know, people say, well, we are the descendants of those who survived. That is not true. That is not true. We are the descendants of those who survived. We're also the descendants of those who chose to become ancestral.
Okay, talk about that.
See, they didn't just die. They didn't choose to die. Those who jumped in the water chose to become ancestral immediately. Because becoming immediately ancestral empowered those who were left on the boat.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were doing them a favor, right? Because we come from people who know that you don't die, you change forms. So if you want to affect the living, you change forms, right? And there were ancestors who chose to change forms in order to assure that the others on the boat would arrive alive. And that's precisely what happened.
Wow.
It's precisely what occurred. And I also believe that those of us on this side of the water who have taken African names, and I'm one of them, my ancestral name is Omotosho. All the names that we take on this side of the water, I believe, was a name from one who was thrown into the ocean.
You talk about and describe in the novel The Great Fish.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It was horrific the way it was described. I've heard that the great fish, the shark,
Yes.
followed
Absolutely.
the slave ships, those death ships. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. In fact, not only did they follow it for about 300 or 400 years, the shark changed their swimming pattern such that their feeding pattern became the outline of the transatlantic trade. That's how they knew it was triangular. The ships, the sharks swam in that triangle because our ancestors' bodies were their main source of food, right? For all of those years. What we also have to understand is the ways in which the fury is still in the water. Right? The fury is still in the water. One day people are going to connect this and understand how, in fact, they would understand this better if they would start naming these hurricanes African names. Yeah. Yeah. I believe that. I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe that. Because you cannot disturb the universe and the universe has nothing to say.
Wow. I don't know what else to say after that. Just one other thing. You talked about your process. How long did it take to write this book? What did your body feel like?
Ooh.
What happened to your spirit? What did you feel in that process?
It was easily the most excruciating process I have ever endured. But it was also the most creative. Because the ancestors would not give me this story if I would not take the journey with them. They said, you cannot tell this story. You must live it. The other thing that made this difficult for publication is they would not allow me to choose a protagonist. There is no I in this novel. Everything is we. Right? And when I submitted this manuscript to a publisher, they said, well, this doesn't really work because when you write a novel has a protagonist, it has a denouement, it has a rise in action, etc. And I said, well, I've not really written a novel because what my ancestors would have done at this time would not have been the novellic form. They would not have studied the English literary forms. So I said, the best I can give you is I've probably written an epic poem, probably. Right. And they said, well, Dr. Black, we don't really think this is going to work because it doesn't really fit a literary genre. And I said, well, I'm going to say this to you. Not only will this work, right? Not only will this book work, but this book is going to transform lives. I believe that. And they told me this. They said, then we're going to compromise because we don't really believe you. And I said, okay. And they said, we'll put it out in paperback. We won't put it out in hardback first. Wow. This is my only book that was not published in hardback first for that reason. And now this has probably been reprinted 12 or 14, 15 times.
Wow.
Yeah. The thing that's been most interesting is also when white people read this book. And so many of them
talk about that.
What's funny is so many of them have said, I'm so happy. She said it was a horrible story. It made me so sad, but I'm so glad to know your story. I said, no, ma'am. This is your story. This is your story. And I'll never forget this white man. He said, how is this my story? I said, this is your ship.
Right.
These are your navigators. We're going to your land. How in the world is this my story when you were the one at the helm?
Wow.
What I told you is about your own spirit. And so that has been revolutionary. White people, I have to say that now they read it and say, oh my God, I just can't believe. And I said, well, now what you really know is the middle passage. Okay. And they said, we'll put it out in paperback. We won't put it out in hardback. Oh, come on, ancestors. I ain't mad about it. The thing I told them is that
keep talking.
Okay. Is that this story is yours also because the middle passage is a symbolic representation of what America would be. Before we ever get here, that boat is symbolic of what America would be. White folks in the upper deck.
Okay.
Black people in the hull at the bottom.
Right.
Weeping and wailing and crying. The middle passage is nothing more than a symbolic foretelling, right, of the nation, right, to which we were going, right? But what it's also telling is you're not going to kill all of us. You're not going to kill all of us.
Right.
Even in your effort, right? Your effort will be thwarted. But the thing that was hardest for me in this book, Pastor, is what the ancestors told me is white people did not capture us because they had guns. White people did not capture us because they were more technologically advanced. That is not why white people captured us. I've been mad at white people for years about this. Yeah. They said, the ancestors told me white people captured us because when we got to the place where we stopped going to rituals.
Okay.
When we got to the place where we thought we no longer had to gather at the feet of the elders. When we got to the place where we started ignoring our own wisdom and our own value systems, we opened the doors, right, for someone else to come in and to plant seeds of decision. But the answers kept telling me, they said, it is not white people. It is not white people. It is not white people. And again, I was so angry because I said, of course it is. They said it is not white people. Because we were too spiritually endowed not to know they were coming.
So that answer gives us agency.
It gives us agency. That's exactly right.
How do you see the intersection to what you just said and where we are right now? Because
the first, number one, fighting or arguing for or begging for or hoping that white people find and concede value unto black people is a colossal waste of time. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
And much more importantly, under agency, what we got, we don't need it. Because everything in this country, we made it. The problem is we keep getting mad because of what somebody took from us. If we'll understand that we are the black creators, we can recreate the same thing you took. We made it in the first place. So you can actually have that old thing. You know what I mean?
I do.
If we really understand that we are creative people by nature, You know, we would do the same thing grandma used to do when the cake fell in the oven, right? She just bake another one. You don't spend days mad at the cake, you know? And so I really want us, I don't want us to be angry at, I don't want us to be mad at. I want us to be absolutely indifferent to white supremacy. Because see, blackness is going to thrive without white supremacy or right next to it.
Yes.
If we understand the power of what it means to be African. But see, we got to get there too. Too many of us want to be black, but we don't want to be African.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only way to be black and not to be African is to be a figment of white imagination.
Say more about that.
Because blackness is a creation of whiteness.
That's right.
Right. They made us blacker in order that their dirty white would still look clean.
Oh, wow. Oh.
See, no, seriously, do y'all feel me? See,
You're in the house, Doc.
Yeah.
You're in the house.
the blacker the black thing is,
Right.
you can put cream next to it and it'll look white. That's why you couldn't just be brown, you had to be black. Because it was a construction whose goal was meant to stand in contrast to the purity of whiteness.
Yes.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if we understand that we are African people, we'll get out of the color play and the color dilemma. And what we'll understand is that we are people who came from a mighty land, and we were the Ewe, the Tiv, the Ga, the Serere, the Bambara, the Bassa, the Akan, the Mandinka, etc.
Call the roll.
Right. And what we'll understand is our lesson was that the Mandinka was fighting the Ewe. That's the lesson, really. That's really the lesson.
Say that one more time.
Because the truth of the matter is, there was enough hunting ground, there were enough rivers, there were enough trees for everybody all over the continent of Africa.
Right.
Right. Some of our greed was our own. It was our own. Right. And what being in this land and what capitalism has made us believe is that materiality is the sign of success.
Yes.
Materiality is not the sign of success. Materiality is the sign of excess. And excess is the sign of arrogance. That's why God never gives anything more than its daily due.
That's right.
Birds look for one worm, not a whole can. Because what? Because birds believe that if God delivered a worm today,
Yes.
God will do it tomorrow. And when one gets beyond that, you start throwing off the balance of the universe.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why, we want strawberries all year long because we like strawberries. The truth of the matter is, if we ate the things in the seasons in which they were given, right, it corresponds to the health of the body. But the excess is going to take its toll, because we're taking in things, and we're taking the things at rates, right, that are unhealthy. But it's because we believe that materiality is the sign of arrival.
So, Doc, what I'm going to do is members of our audience that may want to ask questions, there's a microphone in both aisles. Our team is going to keep you safe. But if you have a question, you can start making your way to the microphone. While they're doing that,
yes, sir,
I want to know something about the hum. There was a resonance there. I felt it at my core. It seemed to be a part of our survival.
Absolutely.
Could you extrapolate the hum?
Yes, sir. The hum was really African people's way of getting past the limitation of language. Because many of them didn't speak the same tongues, but they had the same rhythms, right? And our inheritance in this country is really the beauty of the maintenance of the hum, if you will, as the first language of the diasporic African, right? The hum is really our first language, which is why in the early Black church, when folks came together and did what folks used to do called devotion, right? They would hum.
Right.
But they would hum because the hum is the beginning of spirituality, right? And they would get down, on their knees in front of that fold-up chair, and got me over that great Jehovah, feeling through the right? Because what the hum is really doing is saying we can speak without words, right? Words are a limitation sometimes to meaning, right? And what our ancestors discovered on those ships is if we would hum together, the limitation of language would not bar our unity.
I see.
Right. And so that's precisely what happens. And the hum again becomes kind of the cornerstone of diasporic Black identity.
So if there are questions tonight, there are microphones in the aisle. And if there are questions from our virtual audience, we want to hear those as well.
I pray I've not bored y'all.
We're not St. Paul Nation. Go ahead, Elder.
There's so many points in this book.
Yes, sir.
Every page sings something else. I read it in 2 days.
Wow.
And I think on page 157, when the young brother, when they were in Charleston,
yes,
and Nicaragua, and I don't want to tell too much because there's the baby and the dagger,
yes,
and there's Jaha, and there's
yes,
so much.
Yes.
But when he recounts his rape on the ship,
yes, yes,
I was enraged.
Yes.
You know, and I went upstairs to take a shave at 6, and I came back downstairs, and before I could do anything, I put pen to paper. Oh, my glasses.
I understand that.
Sign of age. But and this is just the start of a piece, but to be continued. It said degradation, humiliation, violation. We endured. We endured because we knew we had an obligation. We knew we couldn't die because there would be a future generation. Sure. So we fought. We fought the urge to jump overboard. We encouraged each other, even as heads banged against planks and blood poured. We found ways to connect with each other through nonverbal communication. And we were wondering, what had we done to find ourselves in this horrific situation? They made us sick with all their dis-ease, and we prayed to our God repeatedly, please, 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 let us, lost at sea Africans, be found. By your omnipotence, make them turn this ship around. And that's where I stopped.
In fact, brother, stay right there for a minute. Because one of the things that happens in this book that probably one of the greatest historians, I won't call his name, but one of the greatest historians in America called me after he read The Coming. And he said, Black, I have to be honest with you. You've done one thing that no other person has done yet. You unveiled the rape of Black men.
Yes, yeah.
And let me tell you why this is critical. Because I'm not the first person to know that.
Right.
So I've wondered that then why haven't other people said it? Why haven't other people written about this? And I even asked him, I said, why haven't historians written about this? And his answer was profound. He said, most people understand there will be a price to pay for any man who writes about this. If that's even people will associate you, right. With this act and with this behavior. And I said, then that's part of the reason the ancestors gave it to me.
Right.
Because somebody has got to be bold enough to tell the whole story. Somebody's got to be bold enough to tell the whole story. Because not only is the rape of the men important, but the rape of the men is also important in order for us to begin to trace even the way in which that plants the seed for a kind of hyper homophobia, right? That is making us abuse each other now. Right? And so it's very important for us to understand this, right? And it's very important to us to understand also, we cannot honor these ancestors. We cannot honor their bodies fully, right? If we won't claim the fullness of their pain.
Oh, I see.
Right? And so I thank you for that, brother.
And one other point, if I might, is real quick.
Elder, make it real quick.
Real
because
quick.
We've got a couple other
Page
comments.
138, to ascribe them humanity they've never proven.
Yes.
They can only see their own people as precious. They too were in bondage, but
Yes.
of the spirit.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. Yes, sir.
All right. My sister, you have a question? Please. Is that Jarian? Hey, Jarian, go ahead. What's your question?
Hi, Dr. Raleigh. Hi, Dr. Black.
Hello.
Thank you for reminding me to keep my hum. And I really appreciated that you mentioned the role of the women in the rebellion.
Yes.
They were at the top and they were in a strategic position.
Absolutely.
I want you to talk about the part that Elder Bruce referred to briefly, when the mother gave birth to her child,
Yes.
and then they used the dagger to kill the
Yes.
child.
Yes.
And in addition to that, they threw him in the fire.
Yes.
But before we even got to that part, they hung the mother, not the mother, they hung another woman over the ship, and
Sure.
half of her
Sure,
was
sure,
eaten by
sure,
the shark.
Sure.
So when you're talking about that, could you also relate it to the way our Black children are killed today and to keep us quiet?
Yes. In fact, I'm gonna relate it a different sort of way.
Yes.
Because one of the things I think that the middle passage did, I almost want to say brilliantly, but I don't want to compliment it, but they did thoroughly, maybe I will say, is to use Black women's bodies, of course, for their own pleasure. We got that. But another thing, begin to use Black women's bodies as a way of constantly feeding the fury of Black men.
Say more.
See, we have to really understand that part of the dream of slavery was the absolute disillusion of Black men and women's unity. So treating women like that, what they would do is then look back at the men. Right? Like look and see what we did. Look and see what we, but see, the thing we have to do now though, as Black people, is as Black men and women, we have to be clear that Black men and Black women's struggle, Black men and Black women's pain, right, is absolutely positively equal in this thing. We got to get out of this notion that, oh my God, the men suffered more. Oh my God, the women suffered more. That's a silly argument.
Dr. Black, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. And it subtracts from the building of our unity. Right? It subtracts from the building of our unity. And what I'm trying to show in this book too is the ways in which, even when the men were calling their names and then the women did so upstairs, what they were really doing, right, was putting their names in successive harmony. Right? So that one might go, Coyote, another, Chitalala! Right? What we were really doing was telling white folks, it's not gonna work.
Wow.
It's not gonna work. This is not going to work. It might look like it is for this moment, but it's not going to work. And so I think it's very important what you brought up, but I think it's important to see that, right, as white supremacy's attempt to draw a wedge between Black men and Black women.
My God. We've got some questions from our virtual audience. Lisa, what do you have?
Okay, so there was a question from Miss Black, Pinnock. If you could display the question again. My question is, Dr. Black, do you believe that the greed and the ancestors' denial of our spiritual commitment may in fact be a karmic response? And how do we, the conscious, change the generational challenge?
I understand the question. I will try to answer this very, very briefly. The thing I think our ancestors might be a little frustrated with is that we've gotten to this land, and for all kinds of complicated reasons, but we've gotten to this land and fallen in love with a savior. And I know that I'm a church pastor, but we've fallen in love with a savior and hinged our lives and our eternity, right? But we have not hinged our lives upon the salvific nature of what those ancestors did for us. See, for me, if I'm going to call upon Jesus, and I might, no problem, right? I have to also say Harriet.
I understand.
I got to say Harriet. I got to say Harriet. You know, I have to say Nat Turner. I got to say Nat Turner because Nat Turner was hanged on a cross too.
My mind.
Right? So when we talk about the blood came streaming down, Black people, that river of blood is full of lots of people's blood. You know, and so I think that it's important for us to begin to understand that we need a spirituality, right, that is not exclusive. We need a spirituality that's not exclusive to one being. Right. And then the other part of the question that I think is important is millennials. Millennials, first of all, millennials are a very different breed of people. I like millennials, but I think we made a grave error. The millennials inherited that error. And the error I think we made as people in my generation, I'm 50 something, is we at some point decide that we didn't need the institution of the church anymore. And it's killing us now.
I see.
See, it wasn't the church. It wasn't really the church that saved us. It was the gathering that saved us.
Yeah.
Right. But we didn't make our children do it. So when our children now get in trouble, they don't know where to go.
Right.
They don't know what to do. They don't have the songs to hum. And so they go to substances. Right? And they go to physical things, right? In my head, right? When I get in trouble, right? And sometimes I do, you know, when I do something I ain't got no business, right? I'll say, I shall not be moved. My grandmother used to sing this song, right? And I remember her rocking and singing this song, right? What I didn't know is that she was creating an inheritance for me, right? But she made me go to church whether I liked it or not. And if I would tell Black people anything, get these children into an institution that's bigger than a person.
All right, we have another question to my right.
Dr. Black,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you so much for writing that.
Oh,
and I
yes,
want you to
ma'am.
know that I read that book with so many different emotions.
Wow.
I read it with anger and I read it through tears,
Yes, ma'am.
but there was a little bit of shame. And the shamefulness came in the point where the writer talked about the fact that we were bought. But if we were bought, we had to be sold. So could you speak a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, first of all, of course, as an audience like this knows, the word slavery doesn't mean the same thing everywhere.
Right.
Right. And it certainly didn't in the 15th century. Right. This is as easy as in a way as hiring out a person to do a labor. Right. But of course, what they say is, but we didn't buy their souls. No, we couldn't sell their very spirit. We couldn't put our names on their bodies, right? But the other thing that I think is extremely important is when we talk about this notion of shame, I think it's extremely important for us to understand not only is the shame not ours, but it's also very important to understand that when a person is violated, for the person violated to carry the shame means the violator has gone free. Right? Also, it's incorrect to believe that if I was stronger, perhaps, I would not have been violated. What that does is it takes away the demand of character from the violator.
Correct.
See, I don't want a house where I have to lock it up. And if I don't lock the house, that's the reason somebody stole from me. That's not the reason somebody stole from me. You didn't steal from me because my house was unlocked. If I left the damn door open, that ain't why you did it. You stole from me because you're a thief. Right? But that's important because I don't want to have to renegotiate the terms of how I live, right? Because of your problem. So the shame, leave the shame with the people who created.
We have a question to my left.
Dr. Brawley, Dr. Black.
Yes, Elder.
Thank you. In your book, you did not romanticize Africa. You said that the same problems, people were lazy,
That's right.
people worked
That's
hard,
right.
people that.
That's right.
Can you speak to that for a little while? Because I truly, because we have this idea that we come from kings and queens. And that's not always true.
No.
Right.
No,
And so
that's right.
therefore, so speak to the fact that you did not romanticize Africa. Men who love men, women who love men, all that stuff was known in Africa. So thank you for speaking about that, please.
Yes,
Thank
sir. In a sense, Elder, I'd say this. First of all, we don't need to romanticize Africa.
Okay.
See, when a thing is excellent, it doesn't need extra.
Okay. Write that down.
Right? It's like all of us know Aretha could sing. Everybody in here knows Aretha could sing. But we also know her life was really problematic.
Right.
But that did not subtract from the priceless nature of the voice she had. Which is what that scripture means, that a gift comes without repentance.
Mm.
You can be in whatever state and condition, but the gift in you is still the gift of God.
Right.
Right. And so what I want people to do is, see, I believe subconsciously that people who romanticize Africa really are doing that, trying to make white people believe that Africa is applaudable.
Mm.
What I want to suggest, I don't need a romantic Africa. I can look at kente cloth and see magic. I'm saying I can look at a djembe and see magic. I can look at the Medu Neter and see God. Right? And the notion that people fought each other, of course they did. I fought my brothers and I have a PhD. You know what I mean? So the point is that creativity is its own magic. And Black people have that. And we have that while we're also problematic.
I think we have another question from the virtual audience.
Yes, we do. And the question will be coming through from our beloved Michelle Edwards. Do you feel that hurricanes have a connection with the anger of the women raped and thrown overboard? And maybe that's why they are called hurricanes?
Well, I feel like I kind of already answered that question. Right. So the only thing I'll say is that not just hurricanes. I really believe that the universe itself, right, has a response to the way its Black children, to the way the parents of the universe were dishonored. Right, and I'll leave that there for now.
Dr. Elam, you have a
Yes.
question?
Good evening.
Good evening, brother.
It wasn't, I haven't, when I got to the hum and later on in that section, I haven't read about gatekeepers since Sobunfu Some.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the audience may not have just got that, or people who are reading it, because of course I know it for Sobunfu Some and Malidoma Some, and being an initiated gatekeeper.
Right.
I'd like to ask you to speak on that.
Sure.
Yes.
The thing I think that's most important, of course, in absolutely every ethnic group on the planet, people understood that there were people who arrived differently. Mm-hmm. But the reason this is profound is because, see, we come from people who are healers by design, right? Okay. We come from people who, they didn't even have hospitals. Right. People who, 200,000 and 300,000 people in no hospitals. That's because healers were doing their work. Right. And I'm going somewhere with this. We come from people who can literally speak a headache out of your head. If that's true, the notion that they did not understand the differences of the desires of the body is not intelligent. In other words, the beauty of even sexuality differences, the beauty of what it means to be contoured and constructed differently in the body. What Africans were asking was not the notion of who you're sleeping with. What Africans were asking is, God, what is this? That's the question, right? God, what is this? God, what are you doing? All right, not because we agree or disagree, but God, what's the point? See, if you're a spiritual person, the question is always, God, what is the point? When you start talking about your own preferences, you're out of the spirit now.
Ooh.
Right? Most people would prefer ice cream to broccoli, but that's not, but one doesn't make it. Ice cream, though it tastes good, right? To eat that every day would be very elementary, right? You force a child to eat the broccoli, not because they like it, but because of what you know it will do for them. And I'm using the metaphor because in a community, right? Community means every possibility of God's imagination must be represented. Right.
That's
And
profound.
God's imagination is bigger than what you like.
I get that.
Yeah. So it will include some people you don't like. Right. It would include some things you don't prefer. It must, because it's God. Right. Community by definition is God. Right. Our job is to grow and mature enough to find God in all things. Yes, sir.
You just challenged us on that one. You really did. We have to sit with that. Is there another question? There's one more coming in. We're going to make this the last question.
Okay.
And go ahead.
This is from Janetta Thomas King. Dr. Black, how long did it take you to settle your spirit after writing this book? Or has your spirit settled or healed?
Every day when I was writing The Coming, I would have to go outside after I finished the day's writing and lay upon the earth. I'm a water child, right? So I would have to lay upon the earth because only the earth could ground me, right? And only the earth could settle me. Every day when I would literally go to my front yard and lie upon the ground. You know, my son was in the house and he was like, Daddy, I said, I'm good. It's all good. You know, it's good. It's good. It's good. But I had to do that because some days I was so psychologically and emotionally distraught that otherwise I would have been dysfunctional. I would have absolutely been dysfunctional. And so the question of, am I settled now that the book has been written and is out? I am settled in one way in terms of the story being complete in this form. I'm extraordinarily unsettled, and I'm going to stay unsettled until every Black child encounters this. Right? That's my goal. I want every Black child to encounter this story, to encounter this narrative. I've probably given away 200 or 300 of these books because when kids say, I don't have any money, take it, right? And so the goal is of this book is not fame, it's not any of that. The goal of this book is for the ancestors never to be forgotten.
Yeah.
Right. And for us on this side of the water to understand that if you understand the shoulders you're upon, right, you are gigantic. Just
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Dr.
y'all. Thank y'all.
Daniel
Oh my
Black.
God. Wow. Thank y'all.
Thank you, St. Paul Nation.
Thank you, Pastor. Really, thank you.
This
Thank
has
you.
been
Thank you.
absolutely awesome. To the members who have come out to be in our in-person worship, thank you for being here tonight. And for those who are watching us virtually, thank you for your presence. I want to remind you that tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., look out on our platforms for the next MAAFA moment. And then at 12 noon, Dr. Arthur Presley will talk about trauma and the children. At 7 o'clock, in collaboration with the Black Church Collective, we will have Bishop C. Guy Robinson, who will talk about a trauma-informed church or ministry. So we've got more to come. And then don't forget, Friday night at 7 o'clock, we're going to have our second movie. And I'm just excited. These two directors have done a phenomenal job. Cast, company, and crew. You have told the story. We have envisioned this year, Dr. Black, we have bookended stories. So we have the historic telling of MAAFA, the trauma, which you saw Monday and others have witnessed it. And then Friday night, we're going to talk about how that trauma, the MAAFA, shows up in present time. And so stay with us on this journey. Now, Dr. Black has brought some books with him. It is now very difficult to get on Amazon.com because St. Paul Nation is buying up all the books. We are a reading congregation. But if you want a book tonight, Dr. Black has bought some books with him for sale. And also for those who have your books with you tonight, you want him to sign it, he will do so tonight. That is for the in-person audience. Bless you for being here, and you have access to Dr. Black. With that being said, good night, God bless, and don't let anybody steal your joy. Let's receive this remembrance moment.
Hi, my name is Paulette. I'm here to share my I Remember story. I remember being on a bus with my classmates. We were going on a school trip. If I close my eyes, I can literally hear the talking, the laughter, the squeals of excitement. We were almost there. Yeah. I got up to use the bathroom. I walked to the back of the bus. I had to pass this white boy who was the school bully. He had never messed with me before, so I quickly dismissed the uneasiness that I felt. I used the bathroom. Sorry. I dismissed the uneasiness that I felt as I walked to the back, and I just avoided looking in his eyes. I used the bathroom quickly, and I exited. I took about 2 steps, and all I heard was, he spat on me. I froze. My whole world froze. Everything around me froze. I felt like I had been diminished to a pulp. I remember going home that night and scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing to remove what I felt this white boy had conjured up from the pit of his stomach, from the pit of his life, from the pit of his soul, and regurgitated on me. I don't think I'll ever get that stain off of me.